Hi, I'm Heather McLean, editor at SVG Europe, and I'm here today with Ruth Lilley, freelance sports content producer, who was recently our guest at the very first SVG Europe Women virtual event. She was super successful on that, and because of that, we've got a ton of questions that were sent in for her that we didn't have time to get around to in the recording. So this is what we're here for today. Hi, Ruth.
Hi.
Hi. Cool. Okay. So first question for you was, have you thought about doing any additional training while you're not working? And if so, what?
So I have thought about it, but I've always sort of tended to learn on the job in TV. So I'm finding it very hard to, decide on something that I can read about. And I just feel like as it's such a practical job, it's just much more beneficial being hands-on and actually just doing it. So, I've been practicing with the new sort of Avid version because I think that's going to roll out soon in some of the companies. So that's kind of been good. It's all self-taught. It's just going from the old. And I've had the intention to practice my languages, but I've just not quite got around to it yet because it's quite hard to concentrate in lockdown. There's just so much going on, which sounds weird when you're locked down and isolated. But and then you've kind of got the cost of courses as a factor as well. Like, you could pick up starting a master's or doing a tech-based course, but you've got the cost to consider. And also, is a tech-based course going to be as beneficial when you're not touching a camera or an edit suite or like being in an OB truck demonstrating directing or anything like that? So I don't know, the thoughts have been there, but I haven't actually really got around to doing anything physically as a course, basically.
Cool. I think that's perfectly understandable. So next question for you is, it's also about training, but do you think there might be any retraining available for some people as things turn to remote productions? So in lockdown, looking at BT Sport, for instance, and well, all of them, all BBC, Sky Sports, they're all doing the same thing. But also, there's going to be a lot more remote productions going forward. So will there be retraining available so that sort of camera operators might be able to learn to use remote cameras, that sort of thing? How do you see that working?
So they'll have to be, obviously, because people are going to have to adapt to the new way of the industry. But again, it's very hands-on, and I think camera operators will sort of be thrown in. They'll be prepared to put their hands up and say, yeah, I can operate a remote camera. But then with remote cameras, you already have those trained camera operators. You've got, in sport, you've got more remote cameras happening every day. You've got fixed rig documentary TV series that have been using remote cameras for years. So you kind of already have those trained operators. I think it's more going to affect sort of office and organizational staff like production managers, coordinators, who are going to have sort of more understanding about how the operation works and how we're going to get sort of feeds in and push out work, basically. So it's more of a workflow training, I think, rather than a practical.
Cool, yeah. And another question for you. Are you keeping in touch with clients to make sure they know you're available and if and when they resume work again? And what is the balance between sensitivity to the current environment and putting yourself out there? Because there is a balance. We've discovered that through our work at SVG Europe as well. So what are your thoughts on that?
So I think it's a little tricky question because you've kind of got to be sensitive. They're also going through lockdown. A lot of them also been furloughed. And I mean, I've been in touch with people who are my friends, who work in the industry and, catching up, how are they, and doing it that way. But I'm not sort of begging for work yet and saying, hey, look at me, don't forget me, kind of thing. Because you've got to understand they are human. They've got families, they're going through the same thing. I think it's not really worth pestering until an actual date for sport is drafted. I know the government said something about sport being able to come back soon, but they've got to get their heads around what's going to be available, how they're going to work from then on. So I think it's about being a bit reserved at the moment with contacting people. But I think people can put themselves out there indirectly. You can spend your time now updating your LinkedIn, updating your CVs, and just kind of trying to do stuff proactively out there. I mean, if you do something creatively, put it out on Twitter or something, you never know who's going to watch it. But yeah, that's kind of the only advice I can give. It is a sensitive time. So I wouldn't be pestering like my old clients and contacts. If you were good at your job before this happened, I'm sure they'll be in touch again when they need a freelancer again, basically.
Yeah. And someone else asked, do you already know what your next job in sports broadcasting is going to be? Have you got anything booked at all, or are you just waiting for anything in particular?
So my diary got completely wiped because obviously all the season's just finished. well, postponed, sorry. But I do have my Tokyo contract has been amended and postponed until 2021. So that's my next booking. The rest of it's going to be a waiting game. And I think, you know, production managers and producers who are the people that pick people to hire are going to look at their full-time furloughed staff first. Like, freelancers will be bottom of the list. And unfortunately, that's just kind of the way it's going to be. So, you know, if you're a furloughed full-time staff, I wouldn't be panicking. As a freelancer, maybe now's the time to sort of think, is there something else I can do if those jobs don't come back when the season starts in a couple of months?
Yeah. And on that kind of note, I mean, someone else asked, do you think the virus is going to have an impact on your next job, being a freelancer and also being a woman? This person said, if there is a choice to make, will men be chosen over you?
I don't want to be sexist in any way, but it is a man's world in sports broadcasting. I've always found that across the board. There's a lot of productions now that are trying to do 50-50, which is obviously much better. But I do think the first jobs coming back will be the technical jobs. So producers will be less likely to be picked, who I think are majority female. Just from opinion, that might not be fact. But camera operators, EVS operators, most of them I probably work with 98% male. So they are going to be the first choice because the production can't really happen without them. So yeah, I think male freelancers in that sense will go back first. But I've always been sort of hired by a male. So I'm hoping that, you know, it's not going to be, oh, she's female, I'm not going to pick her. If you were good at the job, I don't see why you won't get picked. Like, you won't get emailed, so it picked as like it's a team. But, you know, I think it is difficult. It is a bit of a boys' club. But I don't see why gender should come into a factor about when jobs come back.
Cool. And you already kind of touched on this area, but another question is, are you thinking of changing job at all, moving to another industry in TV, or changing profession completely? I mean, you already said, you know, maybe not right now, but at some point freelancers might have to think, what else can I do? So what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So, I mean, I do love working in sports broadcasting and I wouldn't change it for the world. But before lockdown even happened, I was considering doing a sort of switch merger. So like, I do some sports broadcasting and some of another genre, like reality or factual, or potentially even go into film. But, you know, that's a big leap and they've all been affected by coronavirus. So at the moment, it's a bubbling idea, but whether it will happen or not, I'm not sure. Not at this point anyway.
Yeah, it's difficult. Next question for you, there's lots of them, it's good, isn't it? Do you think there'll be a scale of importance for sports being filmed and getting prime airtime as live sport comes back? I mean, we've already got Bundesliga coming back and the Polish League, but this person saying, you know, will bigger sports like the English Premier League come up first and last more niche sports like badminton? And will crowds or money, like rights, advertising, subscription, or ease of filming be the thing that is used to decide? So big question.
Yeah, I know. So basically, most of this is just sort of opinion, like nothing. I don't know any fact, but I know they were doing sort of the number required to bring back, say, a Premiership rugby match or a Premier League match. You know, including officials, broadcasters, players, like, and security and everything. I honestly think that the first sports back would probably be those you can control infection better at. So maybe the smaller sports like badminton, where you've only got 2 to 4 athletes, you've only got, you know, it's a bit more able to control it. And it might not be what the fan wants. But I think in terms of the way that it's going to work, I mean, golf, for example, might come back sooner than we think. You know, they've already opened up the golf courses here. Tennis might be another one that might start a bit earlier than everything else. But yeah, I think it's quite difficult to say, because big team sports like football and rugby, I mean, rugby, it's a contact sport, you know, and I know that Premier League said certain things about tackling and looking away and stuff like that in football, and it's not really a good health and safety tactic of how to play sport. So I think those sports should wait a little longer. I hate to say it, but and then you've got the other things, is like, are they going to test everybody that's involved on a sports day? You know, are they going to, like everyone, including broadcasters, and say you work on 3 different matches, are you going to be quarantined for that whole 2 weeks to make sure that you don't pick up coronavirus in between broadcasting? So I don't know. And then you've got the idea that players are already breaking quarantine rules. Are they going to get tested break those rules again, and then they'll come back and play and not get retested, but they've gone and hugged somebody or done something, so there's a lot of questions, but I think the sports that you can contain will probably be the better ones to come back first.
Yeah, I agree. Another one for you. Since lockdown, some people, I guess broadcasters and that, are saying that their production and staffing budgets have been cut, and therefore they now need to justify the requirement for X number of staff, and that will, impact things as live sport returns. So rather than just saying, yep, this is the squad I need, this is how much money I need, they'll now say, okay, I need this person because, maybe I don't need two of them. Do you see freelancers maybe having a peak if there's an urgent need, as live sports returns, there's going to be all of a sudden a ton of stuff that needs to be filmed, and then it being cut down again? Or, how do you see this kind of budgetary requirement and need shaking out now?
So in terms of the budgets, they were already being tightened. So I've noticed, like, for example, some people will just send a camera operator for a shoot with a contributor and expect them to do the interviewing. And I like, having spoken to, I've been a video journalist before, so I'm used to doing both, but speaking to camera operators who are a bit older than me, for example, who aren't used to doing that, they feel a lot more comfortable when you've got a producer on site who takes on that responsibility, warming up your contributor and talking to them. And I've noticed more and more that people just send a camera operator rather than two, and I think that's going to continue. Or expect a lot more presenters and contributors to sort of do their own and manage their own time. So I know a lot of remote production on the TV that's happening at the moment, they're sort of managing their own production in their living rooms, for example. And I think with full-time staff who've been furloughed, they're going to get considered first all the time, like in every situation, and is now their opportunity to sort of fill those roles that they wouldn't have done before. Just because there's no budget, they go, oh, well, instead of working Tuesday, you can come and do the match day on a Saturday as X role, even though you've never done it before. Then you've got the query, is that going to lower the quality? I feel like anyone who's in a full-time furloughed staff position is in a much more comfortable situation now, because now's the time to put your hand up and go, oh, I'll try that role. And I feel like people are going to say, oh, well, yes, you're already on the books, let's do that. In terms of freelancer bookings, I'm not sure there'll be a massive peak. I think more it will be a diary that's crammed, and because everybody wants to get back to work and wants to get back to being paid, they're going to accept a lot more work in a tighter space. So where you might have had 30 days worth of work spread over 3 months, for example, you might ram that all into 1 month and like not have a day off for a month just because you need to get back out there and get paid. So I don't think it's a peak exactly. I think it's going to be more of a sort of cram your diaries with whatever you get given, for a lot of people anyway.
Yeah, bit of a frenzy, a working frenzy. Yeah. And this is the last question for you, so which links back into this one. So how do we future-proof ourselves for when things go back to normal, when there are rumours that rates will go down, jobs will go to mates before who is best for the role possibly? There's always that thing, it's not what it's who and all the kind of industries in media, they do work that way. You think, oh yeah, I know that person, that they'll be good for it, rather than someone that you haven't met before. What do you think of that?
So I think there's always a problem. I've already seen jobs being edited completely under rate. Some people say, oh, it's a part-time job, but actually when you read what they want you to do, it's 5 days a week, 9 to 5 at least, and they're paying you for like 1 day's worth of work. And I think it's just going to take a sort of strong hold of freelancers to sort of stand back and say, actually, you used to pay me X, why should I accept £100 less for the exact same job, where actually you might end up doing more to your role because there's less people in production. So not that they should be paying you more, but if they're expecting you to do more and have one less producer on site, then that should reflect in the rates, and I don't think they should drop. With regards to sort of the mates thing, like you said, it's who you know, not what you know. And I think it goes also back to sort of the boys club thing a little bit. Although I know that sort of a lot of my jobs, I've originally been recommended by friends or ex-colleagues, but I feel like I don't use them now as a, hey, I know you, can you get me a job on this? If they've worked with you and they know you're good, then hopefully like their production manager, who you may never have known before, will be like, oh yeah, she was good, we'll get her back. So it is tricky, the mates question, because I mean, I'm good friends with a lot of people I've worked with. So they do go, oh, but they don't really offer me a job. Like, they don't go, oh, my friend, like, Ruth is not doing anything, can we get her on board? It's more, we need a producer. Oh, what about Ruth? Like, it's that kind of, it's very hard to say that without going back to the sort of the boys club and the who you know, not what you know. And that's just how the TV industry works, really. And it always has done.
Great. Okay, cool. Well, thank you very much for your time, Ruth. And I hope the rest of lockdown goes well for you. I'm sure we'll see you again anyway.